Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for coming to this pre-show talk. I'm Kate Bassett. I'm the Literary Associate here at Chichester Festival Theatre, and I am delighted to have here with me this evening Jonathan Munby, who is the director of the current production of King Lear, which will be on here in very little time. Just to explain, I'm going to be talking to Jonathan about King Lear and directing for about 20-25 minutes, and then I'm going to open up the discussion to the House, so to you. So please do be thinking up and saving up your questions for Jonathan for that dramatic climax. And also just to briefly introduce Jonathan, I'm sure lots of you have already seen his work, not least his 2016 production here, which was First Light, the First World War drama. But you've also got an amazing track record in classical plays, and particularly Shakespeare. So you've not only worked for the RSC, but recently at the Globe, staged, amongst other things, Antony and Cleopatra with Eve Best as Cleo, and Jonathan Pryce in The Merchant of Venice, at incredible international swathe of productions from Washington to Tokyo as well. So I don't know if we'll touch on those, but focus in on Lear as well. Before we focus in on Lear, do you want to just say a little bit about, I suppose, how you got into directing, by which I mean what drew you to directing, and also what your route was in?
Yeah, sure. I was an actor when I was a kid. I've been acting since the age of 5. My father was in advertising, and I did commercials and things, and then got into telly and had an agent, and did some BBC period dramas, which nobody really knows about, thank God. But yes, Martin Chuzzlewit and those things, years and years ago when I was a kid. And I was always just going to carry on and do that and make a career out of it. And then my parents turned around to me and said, actually, no, you've got to go and get a degree and get a proper job. So I wasn't allowed to go to drama school. So I went to university. I went to Bristol University instead. And the moment I arrived at university, I started to make work rather than be in it, and realised that I enjoyed it much more, much happier the other side of the table. Much happier, with you rather than on here. And it was interesting. It was immediate, actually. And I was fortunate in my time at Bristol University. There were 2 rather brilliant tutors. One, a guy called Professor Martin White, who is one of the, he was an ardent editor for a while and works for New Mermaid Publishing as well. He's a world authority in Jacobean Elizabethan text. And I spent 3 very happy years under his guidance, and he got me reading some extraordinary things I didn't know existed. So him married with another tutor at Bristol, Simon Jones, who ran a physical theatre company. And he again opened the door to stuff that I'd never come across before, and ways of approaching storytelling that I'd never imagined. And so that's really where I started. And so the work that I'm interested in doing, and the work that I hope to continue doing, is a kind of marriage, really, of really taking classical plays and finding a kind of contemporary means of expression. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what your very first role ever was on TV? And then I'll go to Lear.
It was in a commercial, actually. I'm not going to tell you.
That would be product placement. Let's censor it.
Yeah.
Right. What in that case drew you to King Lear? By which I mean, I suppose, either what the play's about or what the play's like aesthetically.
Yeah, gosh, I would have been scared of these big plays, and this is a play that I've been very scared of, and thought that I would never be old enough, wise enough, good enough to take it on, and then suddenly it comes out of the blue, and you take it or leave it, and I thought, let's just do it. And I chose to do this production for a number of reasons. One was the chance of working with Ian McKellen on it, and we can come back to Ian in a moment. It's a dream come true to work with an actor like Ian, who is truly, truly extraordinary. But also the opportunity of doing this epic play in a small space. Daniel Evans, who runs Chichester Theatre, made the very brave decision, I think, to programme King Lear in here rather than the main house. And I call it the main house, the one over there, as opposed to the Fringe over here. And it's a really brave decision because with Ian in the role, you can sell out the Festival Theatre many, many times over for weeks and weeks and weeks. But actually, to tell this story in here makes a huge difference to really the reason why I wanted to do it. The intimacy and the intensity of the experience was really an exciting prospect. To try and get the audience as close to the centre of this play, but also of this man too, to try and get inside his head, felt like a really exciting start to a journey. Yeah. So yeah, Ian, the space, but also this play too. And I thought, well, I won't make a decision until I've actually sat down and read it. And whenever I approach a classical play, especially a play that's been done and done, I try and divorce myself as much as I can from previous productions. And it's very hard because, you know, we see these plays often, you know, performed. And our favourite moments from other people's productions linger long in the mind. So I sat down and I tried to approach it and read it as if I'd just been handed a new play. So start with really what's on the page. And I read it. I read it in a few afternoons. And I was really surprised by what I read. There were things there that I don't think I'd ever seen in productions before. And it really kind of led me on a journey to kind of explore some of those things, which include, you know, it's actually, you know, beyond the politics, and we can come back to that, beyond the idea of monarchy, beyond the cosmology too, and the relationship with nature and the gods. There is at the centre of this play a very intimate story about fathers and daughters and fathers and sons. It's very, very domestic. And I thought, this is thrilling. If we can tell the story in this space, we can really get to the kind of ugly knottiness of dysfunctional family relationships. And I really wanted to really start with that. You know, what is the nature of these relationships? Why did these relationships go wrong? What is at stake with these relationships? What are the triggers that turn son against father, that turn daughter against father? And that's really, yeah, what was one of the major starting points, yeah.
And how does that expand? Because it is in a way a vast to play as well, isn't it? Yeah. About nationhood and... Yeah. Did that draw you as well? Or
it did. Yeah. You know, the work that I'm interested in is really about work that speaks to the present. You know, I'm only interested in telling a story that lives in the present tense, that really does hold a mirror up to who we are now, who we are present tense. And, you know, you can't look at this play and not be reminded of the fact that we are divorcing ourselves on some level from Europe. You know, this is a play about the division of a kingdom. And here we are as we negotiate Brexit. And it speaks directly of that moment. How thrilling to have a classical play 400 years ago that actually gives us an opportunity as an audience, as a group of creative people, to have a conversation about what we're doing and perhaps the perils of what we're doing. It's also a play about leadership and about the folly of a leader who is losing his grip, about a person who acts from an impulse and makes bad decisions, and then has to live with the consequences. That's not at all familiar now, is it? So I was thrilled that that I had this opportunity, and when I started to think about it's a detail, but the programme, for example, I thought how thrilling it would be not to commission the usual sort of 4 or 5 articles for a programme that discuss the play's history or the period or chronology of Shakespeare's plays or whatever, but actually to commission one piece. And I approached Fergal Keane to write a single piece for the programme to talk about how the piece relates to the world that we're currently living in. Yeah, and it's a really exciting piece. I think that really puts all of everything I've just been talking about in focus. Yeah.
Maybe this is a hard question, but can you, in any way, describe what kind of a world your King Lear is in?
I was excited about not doing it in period for a number of reasons. One was to really harness everything that I was feeling and experiencing in the world now. So to place this story really in the present tense. So to create a world, a context for the production that looks familiar, that looks recognisable, that looks like the world that we inhabit in this country. You know, the play is set in England. So to say to an audience, this is your world, to implicate us as an audience, actually, to make us feel responsible in some way, to make us feel like this is about us. That comes with some problems when you're looking at Shakespeare, because if you set it in the present tense, then where is the internet and where are the mobile phones? And if you start to explore that, the play unravels itself. There are 9 key letters in this play, and they have to be hand-delivered. And if they're not hand-delivered, you're screwed, because the play simply doesn't work. It's about how that information is handed from one person to the next. So what we did was created a world that looked familiar and looked recognisable. It was very much its own world. It feels like a kind of parallel universe, the world of our King Lear. Also, it's not the England that we're in, because this king is a king. This king is also not just head of state, but also head of the church. So there's no division between church and state in the world of the play. So Lear as spiritual leader is also a factor in this world. So that was important. So what you'll see in the production is something that looks and feels exactly the world that we're living through, but also weirdly skewed and different, dystopian as well.
Ian McKellen's played King Lear before. I just wondered if you talked about that with him, and whether you talked about, I mean, I'm assuming you kind of both want to explore and re-explore King Lear. Did you have any discussions about re-exploring?
Yeah, we did. I mean, my first question to him was, why on earth would you want to come back to it? Why on earth would you want to put yourself through it? I mean, given what it takes to play this role is just extraordinary in terms of the energy, the emotion, the psychology, just physically getting through this play. It's a mountain. It's a mountain to climb. Why would he, at this stage in his life and career, want to come back to it? Well, he was quite clear about that. He did a production at the RSC 10 years ago, and he felt on some level he left it with unfinished business, that there were still corners to turn, there were still doors to open, there were still things to discover and explore. And also the draw of telling the story in a smaller space. You know, he was in a big theatre at the RSC, and then it went on tour around the world and played these 2,000-seat auditoria. And he was more interested in what this play would be like in a room like this, you know, a room where the audience and the actor are sharing the same air. You're breathing the same air together. That it might be King Lear the conversation as opposed to King Lear the kind of declaration, you know. What we weren't interested in doing was I didn't see that production, but what may have happened in the RSC, which is, you know, a company with a lot of money and a lot of space to fill, you know, it becomes, a pageant at times. This is going to hopefully be the opposite of that we concentrate right down and pare it right back and allow a kind of spareness to the way that we tell it that was really focused on the humanity and the word as well. So I was thrilled to hear that he wanted to take a fresh look at it, and I said to him, you know, are you really just wanting to get into a room and replicate what you did? And he said, absolutely no, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to start with a clean script and a clean slate, and we'll try and forget everything I did. And and he's kept to his word and fresh minted everything, it feels like, in his performance, and has had to, because he's surrounded by, you know, a company of extraordinary actors who are attacking him, you know, in very different ways. You know, they are throwing the ball back at him in a very different way than he got in the last production he did. You know, acting is all about reacting. You only create an expression because somebody has thrown something at you, and you know, if you're a good actor and you're open, you're going to have to change your response depending on what you get. And he, has revealed himself as one of the most brilliant actors, because he will only respond to what he's given, and that's what makes him thrilling, and what makes, I think, the production that we're doing exciting, because it will be different every time. and it will be absolutely about the moment. He will respond absolutely to what is thrown at him in the moment.
I'll come back to the other cast members in a minute, but just when you talk about paring down, do you want to say anything about the text and whether or not you've pared that down? Or
well, those that are coming tonight will be glad to know that I've cut it. I think uncut, it's probably about 4 hours, isn't it? It's huge, huge play. It's one of the longest plays, certainly in the canon. And 2 stories. It's unique in the canon, I've discovered. It's not a story and a subplot. It's 2 stories that run alongside each other, which is interesting. I know it's called King Lear, but actually it's 2 stories. It's King Lear and his daughters, and Gloucester and his sons. And they're given equal space and equal weight in the story. And they run in parallel, and they are there to reflect each other, I suppose to illuminate each other, fathers and daughters and fathers and sons. And they run alongside, and it's an extraordinary piece of writing just in that respect. But I couldn't put an audience through 4 and a bit hours. We all have very busy and exhausting lives. We'd never get through it. And also, you know, our circumstances of going to the theatre are so radically different from what they were 400 years ago. You know, we're no longer arriving at the theatre in daylight and 2 in the afternoon and leaving at 6 or 7 in the evening. I have to cut the play and do the dramaturgy in order to serve an evening after you have been to work, after you have, you know, led your busy lives. So I have to have that in mind. So I never wanted it to be more than 3 hours playing, which we've just about achieved. So I've cut quite a lot away. Repetition of things, repetition of ideas, information the audience perhaps don't need, digressions away from what's at the core of the play. It was a really exciting time cutting the play, and I felt a great weight lifted, you know, with the more I cut. Just very briefly, for those that are interested, there are 2 versions of this play that exist in the world. There was one that was published in Shakespeare's lifetime, which is known as the Quarto, which is a small book that was, and very few of Shakespeare's plays were printed in his lifetime or published, and King Lear is one of those. So the Quarto exists, and that's possibly a very accurate example of what may have been performed at the first performance of King Lear in possibly 1606. And then 11 years after Shakespeare dies, the folio of the complete works was published. So we have the folio edition of the play, and they are 2 completely different plays. Side by side, almost every page, there's a difference. A different word, a different phrase, different scenes. And so as a director, you have a big question, just in terms of the dramaturgy of it, of which do you do? What I've ended up with in the cut that we're doing is a kind of hybrid of both. So what you're getting is a bit of the original Quarto and the folio text. Scenes I've borrowed from both and moments from both. And that's shifted through rehearsal too. We've tried bits and got rid of bits and tried new bits and got rid of bits. But that's what the cut is. It's a hybrid. And I think all directors probably go on the same kind of journey. But it felt important to start with everything and kind of cut away, because it's all about interpretation and all about the story that we wanted to tell in this theatre in 2017 with these actors. Yeah.
Yep. And just going back to the casting, what kind of a process was that? I suppose I was particularly struck by Kent being a woman in this production, but also Gloucester, or
yes,
or
well,
the Fool,
I was keen to kind of certainly in terms of Gloucester, trying to, you know, Shakespeare's plays have a lot of male characters and few female, and it's nowadays, if you're doing I think certainly a contemporary context for a production, you're kind of duty bound to challenge yourself and ask yourself the question of which characters actually could be played by a woman, which characters in a contemporary world would be played by a woman, you know, and I was reading the play as open-minded as I could be, and Kent was a character that in the first scene defends Cordelia, Lear's daughter, and challenges Lear, and the character read very much like Paulina. I don't know if you know Winter's Tale, another of Shakespeare's plays. There's a character called Paulina who does almost something identical, stands up to the king and defends this woman. And there was something about that I thought was really interesting. I thought, well, okay, well, look, what if we make this character a woman? It's a character that goes on a journey and it gets banished from the court and then has to disguise themselves. And I thought, well, how interesting would it be if, in order to gain access to the inner circle of Lear, she feels compelled to disguise herself as a man, that she has to be a man in order to get close to the king. I thought that might be interesting. So we start with a female character who, in this contemporary world, feels very much like Angela Merkel, like a high-ranking politician. She might even be the prime minister of this world in King Lear, who then gets banished and yes, wants to continue to serve Lear because of the nature of her relationship with him. And there's something about trying to solve the relationships. It's a play on some level about loyalty, about what you're prepared to do for somebody or a cause at whatever cost. And what is the nature of that Kent-Lear relationship? Well, it feels like there's a deep love that this character has for Lear. I don't think it's necessarily a sexual love, but a deep love that has history to it. And the moment I started to think and read it with a woman in mind, it just made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense. What it also does is it focuses the story very much on the two fathers. If you have another leading character that is male, there's another man in there, and I thought, make her female, and so it's a very different dynamic. So you have these two fathers, and this woman caught between the two of them. It's anyway, in rehearsal, it played out in the most thrilling way, and Sinead Cusack is the most perfect actor for it. She's incredible in the role and has harnessed something so beautiful and truthful, as well as having huge fun with the disguise too. She's I won't spoil it. Those of you who are going to come and see it. So yeah, she was the first actress that I approached. I said, look, I'm having this idea about a female Kent. Are you up for it? She said, absolutely not. Don't be ridiculous. I can't play Kent. Anyway, she read it, and we had a conversation, and she began to sort of see what I was seeing in terms of the potential of it. And we've had a great time exploring it. In terms of other characters? Yeah,
no, well, I was thinking about, what other challenges perhaps that Lear had for a director now, and I suppose I was thinking we were laughing earlier, how do you solve a problem like The Fool?
Yeah. Yes.
How do you approach
Fools.
that?
Shakespeare's Fools are a nightmare. Often the text just isn't funny anymore. It possibly was 400 years ago, but in terms of social references or political references that fools might be making. Touchstone in As You Like It or Feste. God, unbearable. So you have to find a way of making it work. And cutting and being bold with the cut. If something doesn't make sense or something is antiquated, I don't think twice about getting rid of it. If it doesn't work, if a contemporary audience don't understand it, then I don't really understand why it's there. So, for me, with Fools, and I've directed Twelfth Night and had to look at Feste in a similar way. For me, it's all about rooting a character in a world and in a kind of truth. We're not living 400 years ago. It's not also a medieval world, I think, which is what the story of Lear comes from. So the relationship between Lear and his fool is very different in a contemporary context, and I had to really work hard to kind of define what that is. He's described as an all-licensed fool. So in period, as you probably know, monarchs would perhaps have somebody in their court who was there to tell jokes, to entertain, who might also be allowed, it's about the all-licensed nature of it, tell them the truth when nobody in the court felt that they could. They were given license to speak their minds. And when Shakespeare was writing this play, James I was on the throne, and he had a fool in his court. So Shakespeare is writing absolutely a contemporary story in that respect. But anyway, back to our production in a contemporary context. What we decided was that Lear was a warrior king, and that he led the army, that he had gone into battle in his time, and that this man, this fool, might have been his aide-de-camp, so that we gave him a real job. So that we see that also play out in the production. We see him performing a particular function, so we know why he's there, as well as being the man in Lear's life who is allowed to tell him the truth, as well as being the man who can stand on a table and tell some jokes and entertain people. But casting is tricky. You know, you need an actor with great wit, with great skill, who can do the language, who also in this case, you know, a bit like Feste and Twelfth Night, is musical. You know, the fool sings songs, and we're blessed with Phil Daniels. I mean, I couldn't think of a better fool. He's a gift for a director, and he's learnt to play the banjolele for this production. So you'll be entertained with some hot banjolele playing. But yeah, he's musical. He can sing, and he's witty, and also he's one of the most generous, gorgeous human beings too. So what you have at the core of the play is a very honest, very beautiful relationship between Lear and the fool, and that was important to me because there's an interesting thing that happens in the course of the story. You see the fool caring for this man who is really experiencing the first signs of dementia, and cares for him and looks after him. And at one point, that role reverses, and you see Lear having to look after the fool. And what I needed was to find really two actors who were prepared to explore that relationship. And Ian and Phil, get on like a house on fire. And there's something very beautiful about the nature of their relationship.
It's Q&A time. I can see a lady in the front row just there.
Yes, I was intrigued because you talk about picking out words and how many times each word was said. And I wrote them down as you were talking. And I wondered, how did you decide which words you were chasing? And how that did in any way inform your directing?
Yeah, you know, we had that conversation with the company only today in notes. This came from something that from my research, but also my preparing of the text. I always do this. There's a concordance, a collected a book of language in these plays where you can look up how many references there are to a particular idea, and it also lists how many references there are to a particular word, or how many times a word is used in the text. I mean, great from an academic, boring, I know it sounds, but it's fascinating. Apart from small words like it, or the, or the word that is mentioned most in King Lear is the word me. And it was, the moment I discovered this, it was a kind of a light bulb went on. It is a world of very selfish people in this play. It is a world, apart from those that are loyal to the king and do everything they can to support him, most of these characters pursue their own objective with a kind of ferocity and a mindlessness and a savagery. It's absolutely a play about me, about what I want. And you could argue that Lear falls into that trap absolutely too. His selfishness, his pride is his downfall. It's a play about me. And that's what we were talking about in notes today, just reminding the cast of the meanness, as it were, of these characters. So the other words that crop up more than any others are nothing, seeing, knowing. Can you remember any of the others? Not. Yes, not. Interesting. Knowing and not. You know, a play that has lots of nots in it. You know, it's a play about somebody saying no, not. Fascinating. You know, it's interesting. If you look at that list of words that are mentioned more than any others, it gives you a kind of absolutely a very direct picture of what this play is all about. Yeah.
And two negatives, nothing and not.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lady there. Do you want to?
Good evening.
I'm sure some of us here will have seen Sir Ian's remarkable performance 10 years ago. And his energy level then was outstanding. And I know we're talking about 10 years hence, and I'm wondering if he ever shared with you the changes he might make in order to maintain that energy, because he's brilliant from our point of view. But did he ever share anything with you?
Yeah, you know, director and actor, we have a lot of very intimate conversations about, you know, about the work and about the role and about how we're going to approach it. And you know, one of the reasons I think he wanted to do this production was the fact that it is 10 years later and he's reaching the age of, that Lear is. You know, he's almost 80. And the age of him as a human being, he absolutely wanted to explore in terms of how to play this play, how to tell the story from that perspective. You know, some of the big questions that you have to ask when you're playing this role or directing this play are, you know, why does Lear make those decisions in the first scene? Why does he divide the kingdom? Why does he test his daughters in the way that he does? And his age is absolutely about that. And I think Ian was very keen to, yes, tap into who he is as a human being at this age in his life. In terms of energy, I don't see any difference in him from where he was 10 years ago. I mean, I don't know where he gets it from. He has more energy than any of us. It's extraordinary, actually. He's a dynamo. And I have huge admiration for him, yeah.
It's also the era of older actors proving that, isn't it? Like Glenda Jackson also. Amazing,
yeah, exactly.
Amazing energy as Lear. A couple up there. There's a gentleman on the front of that row.
I'm interested to know, did Ian McKellen ever present you maybe with an interpretation with which you disagreed? And with an actor of that experience and that eminence, do you give him a little more head? Are you prepared to surrender just a little bit of your directorial control?
Yes, of course there are always disagreements. And this was, you know, no exception. But I would be a fool if I didn't have an open mind with working somebody like Ian. I have a huge amount of respect for him. He knows this play better than I do. And we started this process with him knowing this play better than I did. So I would have been a fool not to have embraced everything that he had to say and offer about the play and about the role. That doesn't mean to say that I agreed with everything. I didn't, you know. But he's also a brilliant actor and also respects a director, and so we'll always listen and we'll always try. I can throw anything at him and he'll try it. And it doesn't always stay in the show, or it doesn't always stay in the rehearsal room, but he will try anything. So it goes both ways. But you know, I was very nervous starting this process, and like I was when I was working with you know, with other great actors. You know, Jonathan Pryce in Merchant of Venice, for example. You know, you step into those rooms with some trepidation. Who am I? You know, with my, you know, it feels like limited knowledge, even though I've been doing these plays for 20 years now. I still feel like I'm a rookie and I don't really know what I'm talking about, you know. But, you know, it's interesting that what you discover is that they're just as frightened, that actors feel just as vulnerable as you do. And when they walk into the room on the first day, you know, they're as frightened as you are. So you don't know that at the time, and you don't ever think that. But it's good to remind oneself of that. But no, this has absolutely been I would say a kind of great collaboration. And yes, I've absolutely allowed him to have his head and I've given him space, hopefully, to redefine this Lear in terms of who he is now and the world that he's in now. Yeah.
There is just one other person, then I'll come to you up there. Yeah.
Obviously, Shakespeare is renowned for having cross-dressing and men playing women within roles, obviously due to the era. Do you feel compelled that due to having such a high well-known actor such as Sir Ian McKellen, then pieces you have to follow Shakespeare's set style, or do you feel that you can adapt it into your own gist?
Well, it's interesting. I think Ian feels like a very contemporary actor. I don't think it feels to me like never once actually since we've been in the theatre does his performance feel antiquated or old school. He feels very, very much like a contemporary actor. Actually, like a human being. You know, it's interesting. This language, which is partly written in verse, blank verse, and partly written in prose. If you have an actor of Ian's skill, you know, Sinead Cusack is the same, Danny Webb is the same. You know, we've got brilliant verse speakers in this company. They make it sound like naturalistic text. They make it sound like normal speech. It sounds like somebody just speaking their thoughts. It doesn't sound like grandiose classical acting, which I'm thrilled about. And it's interesting, and this is testament to them and their skill. Even though they've had, you know, very long and illustrious careers, you know, and worked for the RSC and the National, all these big companies, I don't think for a moment that the acting in this production feels old school or antiquated. So what we started, as I said earlier, what we tried to do was look at this play as if we've been handed a new play, as if William Shakespeare delivered this script to Chichester Festival Theatre last week. And looked at it from that point of view, and that's been the premise from start to finish, actually. So no, we've consciously not tried to move away from anything that felt old or antiquated or received as an idea, you know.
There is also that amazingly naturalistic line in Lear, isn't it, where he actually kind of doesn't know what he's going to say next. He starts on something and he goes, I don't know what I'm going to say. That's so very extraordinarily modern, though.
It is very modern.
What an amazing thing to put in a play.
Oh, yeah, if you look at this on the page, it's like some sentences read like a kind of Carol Churchill play in terms of how fractured the language is. And it's interesting, it's another boring academic fact, but it's the play in Shakespeare's canon that has the most unfinished thoughts. And that's interesting, isn't it? In terms of a fractured world, a world where not only a world is fractured, but a brain is fractured too, where a man can no longer finish the sentence, where he doesn't no longer know where the end of the sentence is. That's fascinating, and Lear has 2 or 3 of those moments where his brain shuts down and he has no idea what to say next. And that's not us. That's Shakespeare. Yeah. So what you need is an actor of somebody like Ian's skill who can absolutely harness the heightened nature of this poetry and make it sound like naturalistic speech. Yeah.
I think we're probably going to... do you think we can squeeze one more quick question in?
Yeah.
If it's a quick one, that would be great. There's a gentleman just there.
Thank you very much. I was interested in your reasons for wanting to do this, and one of the main reasons was it was the Minerva. So it sounds like the Minerva is a member of the cast. And I just wondered to what extent it could be envisaged that this could be transferred to another theatre.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is like, the room is the 17th member of the cast. You're absolutely right in that respect. And I've completely shot us in the foot in terms of how we've staged it, because it's almost untransferable in its current state. We would love this show to have another life. We'll see, but it would have to shift. It would have to change. One of the beauties of this room that you're in is the fact that it has really odd idiosyncrasies. Like, for example, you see there's a central entrance here, exit here. There's one down left, but there isn't one down right. Weird anomalies like that. That entrance there takes like 3 days to get to, whereas that one's really quick. You know, that one leads straight from the dressing rooms. That one you have to, take your bus pass to get to. So, it's a weird room that has not only its own kind of weird dynamic, but and intimacy and all those things we talked about. But in terms of staging, when I was sitting at my desk at home working out how we might tell this story, I had to keep all of that in mind. You know, I'm not going to send Ian McKellen on a journey to that entrance over there. You'll notice those who see the show, he will never use that entrance. I mean, rightly so. So, you know, it shifts. It shifts how you're going to stage. It shifts the physical shape, so that if it does go to another space, the lack of entrances from upstage right will still be embedded in the show, which is really, it's interesting. But, you know, it's a unique space, and it's a real privilege to be in it. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your excellent and challenging questions. And thank you, Jonathan, for being so eloquent and fascinating.